is the Bearcast, presented by Bird Culture Ford. Bird Culture Ford has been in Waco since 1936. Ford is the #1 selling truck in Texas 43 years running. The Bearcast is also presented by WellMed Medical Management and USMD Health System Dallas. Here's Craig Smoke and Grayson Grundhafer.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into a brand new edition of the Bearcast on Sic'Em365.com. It is spring game week, the final week of spring practices for Baylor football, but a lot going on outside of just football, and we'll get into all of it. I'm Craig Smoke, Sic'Em365 radio host, also site writer, joined as always by Grayson Grundhafer, director of broadcasting, also team and recruiting reporter for Sic'Em365. Got Armstrong and Jack behind the scenes as well, and Grayson, here we are. A couple more practices and then the spring game on Saturday, and that will be all she wrote for football, at least for the foreseeable future. But as I wrote in the good, the bad, and the ugly this week, we know it's not going to stop news-wise with recruiting and the transfer portal and NIL and all this other jazz that's going on. But it is going to be the last time we see this team on the field for a little while. So, well, I guess we got to enjoy these last few days before it goes into that long stretch before, I guess, Big 12 media days, really, in mid-July before they get back out there.
Yeah, a little sad about that, right? Because spring football has been a lot of fun to cover, a lot of fun to go out there and watch and kind of draw conclusions from kind of what we've been able to see and hear, and that kind of all goes away. And I know when June rolls around, the summer enrollees will come in, which will give us something to talk about, a little bit just about the guys arriving, maybe the summer lifting program, things along those lines. But you're exactly right. I mean, there's going to be a huge pause. It's going to be a little bit of a dead period as far as football content. And so because of that, it's kind of a sad time for sure. It's our last opportunity, but Saturday is always a lot of fun to watch the spring game and get to see the guys actually put on the field. And I know last year we got to draw a lot of conclusions from it, and a lot of it ended up being true.
Yeah, there were some things to take away from last year's spring game. Again, it's a spring game, so it's not, life or death, and it's not a grand determining factor in what your team's going to look like the following year, but it can show you some signs of where they might be strong and where you might be still scouring the transfer portal, et cetera, in the offseason. And I think we have already a pretty good idea of what those positions might be for Baylor, but we'll have a better idea on Saturday. So, Craig Smoke, Grayson Grundhafer, we got some football that we'll continue talking about, but there's also spring sports as well that we will get into eventually as well. But here we are, Grayson, with this spring game. And yes, sad that football will be coming to a close for at least a little while. But again, there will be news. But in terms of what you're looking for this Saturday, I mean, it's not the same as getting ready for a game against Texas or, Oklahoma State or something, and you're like, oh, here's the matchups and all that. I mean, we don't even know what the teams are. Like, we don't know how they're going to do the format. We don't know any of those details. So we're not going to, preview a game, so to speak. But what are some things that you are looking for and would like to see on Saturday?
Yeah, last year it was the ones versus the twos, right? Pretty much across the board, with the exception of Apu, who was just running around playing for both teams, which was honestly, frankly, hilarious. Watching his jerseys all ripped. He's like, changing every other possession, going out playing goal line for the opposite team. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. I think with this game in particular, offensively, I'm looking to see the quarterback position. I want to see Gary do what he did last year and really just cement himself as the quarterback, because basically throughout the spring, that's all we've seen and heard, is that it's not really a competition, it doesn't seem. It's Gary Bohannon. He's the guy. Well, I kind of don't want this to linger into the fall if that is the case, right? I mean, I'd rather it just get over with so we don't have to talk about it, and it can just be Gary's the quarterback. We know how good Blake Shapen is, and that's it. And just leave it at that. So I'm hopeful for that. I'm hopeful that the wide receiver position is healthy enough to go out there and contribute and make an impact and make these quarterbacks look good and actually, go out there and have some success. We'll see. They've been banged up quite a bit, but I do think most of the guys are back ready to go, whether it's Jalen Ellis or Gavin Holmes or Javon Gibson. Monterey Baldwin as well. I mean, these guys I think are going to be ready to go. And so I'm just excited to see them maybe cut it loose a little bit and go out there and really put on a display and show everyone the talent they do have in that room. Josh Cameron's another guy who's definitely on that list as well, and Seth Jones. So that's exciting. I think all these skill positions we're just going to be kind of staring at, right? Because running back as well, when you look at guys like Tay McWilliams, is he going to take over the role? Is this his time? Josh Fleeks, is he going to give us an Abram Smith moment from last year where we came out of the spring game and went, man, Abram Smith is an absolute necessity for this offense? Is there going to be a running back that steps into that? Could it be Jordan Jenkins? Could it be Squirrel? Does Squirrel come out and have a great performance? We just don't know, but I do think that there is a very high likelihood we kind of get that answer on Saturday, because we got the answer last year with Abram Smith.
Yeah, quite possibly. I feel like it's not going to be a one-man show, so to speak, so I know it wasn't last year either, but Tay McWilliams looks good. That's great, but really need to see like 3 or 4 guys, I think, quite honestly, look pretty good ultimately. I don't know. I just don't think they're going to be able to do the whole Smith-Ebner thing again. I think because those guys were so experienced and so had so many skins on the wall. Like even if you bring, even if Tay McWilliams is pretty good, and then let's say, I don't know, like Jordan Jenkins or something, I still feel like it's, we're going to see Squirrel. We're going to see probably 1 or 2 other guys, but how many snaps are given out and divided and all that throughout the year? I mean, we'll see on Saturday kind of what the mindset is right now. So I'm sure it'll be a lot of Tay McWilliams, and then some glances at other guys as well, which I'm looking forward to seeing. I mean, we haven't seen Jordan Jenkins carrying the football very much, and if you've been at practice, not at all. So, the running backs group should be fun to see. And, with those receivers, you said a lot of names, but I think I counted like 2 catches total between that entire group that you just mentioned. That's what's wild is I don't know that we'll have the answer at receiver. Like, I don't think that they're out there scouring for running backs necessarily. I do feel like they probably are for wide receivers, though, and even if it looks pretty good on Saturday or whatever it ends up looking like, I still feel like, or do you feel like as well, that's still going to be a position they're eyeing, even if we saw guys just going off on Saturday? Yeah,
because, Hal Presley's still hurt, so you can't really count on him, unfortunately. I think he's going to be fine for the fall, everything I've heard, but, you still don't want to go into the season with your number 1 guy coming right off of an injury. That's a tough place to be in. And so, I kind of agree with you, because over the course of the spring, I honestly feel like Josh Cameron has probably been their best receiver, which is, I like Josh Cameron. I think he's worthy of a scholarship, no doubt. He is a scholarship guy, but I don't know that he can be your number 1 wide receiver. I think he can be a very good complementary piece. He's a very good blocker, which is something that this offense desperately needs. But I don't know that he can be your true alpha out there. So it's him and Armani Winfield, who's a true freshman, have been, in my mind, based on what I've heard, their best receivers so far this spring. And so that's an issue. And so I'm hoping on Saturday we see guys like, the guys that we thought, Monterey Baldwin, Jalen Ellis, really come out and thrive. Gavin Holmes, show that he's healthy. I'm hopeful for that, because if you get that veteran leadership in the room and you start seeing those guys be productive, maybe I start to feel a little bit better about the room.
Yeah, so at quarterback, it'd be good just to see these guys because, see them out there actually running plays and whatnot. We see them in drills and all that. But, seeing Bohannon and Chapin duel a little bit, and then whatever drones and company throw out there as well will be good. Running backs, we'll kind of get an idea of, who's getting the most carries. It would be Tay McWilliams and then who. Receivers, obviously, we just talked about young guys. We'll see how that goes. Tight end room, I think, looks pretty solid. I'm sure we'll see plenty of throws to Sims and Dabney on Saturday, if not some, young guys as well. Maybe Kelsey Johnson will get a pass or something like that. O-line, I think everybody feels pretty confident in that. Only replacing 1 starter up front. So that's kind of the deal with the offense. I am intrigued to see the kickers and just, kind of what that looks like, who they trot out there, and kind of is everybody, are 5 guys getting opportunities to kick? Is it just a couple guys? Is it kind of clear who the front runner is? I guess we'll have a better idea of that as well, because we really haven't seen any special teams either.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to see a lot of that. We've gotten to see more of the return game a little bit, some of the guys who could be candidates there. So that's intriguing. I think seeing who's going to get the start at left guard is going to be very intriguing for me, because Mose Jeffrey has gotten a lot of run there throughout the spring practices. So I'm curious if he's just come in and just played really well and ends up getting the job. I still think it's going to be Micah Mascua. I just think the talent and overall just his makeup just seems perfect for what they're trying to do on the offensive line. But if he hasn't put together, who knows? Maybe Mose Jeffrey sneaks in there and earns a starting role for this offense. That's going to be another intriguing part of the puzzle, I think, as well, as they try to just fill that one extra position that they need to fill.
Yeah, that will be cool to see. And Mazuka is the proper pronunciation for anybody who reads Mazzccua. It's Mascute, that's Mazuka like bazooka. So maybe that'll become a nickname. Micah the Bazooka Mazuka will be his nickname or something like that. But just I wanted to clarify that for anybody, if you're like, who's that dude? And that, go ahead and put you on the right path as far as repeating his name, because I know how that can get confusing and lost in translation. But he has been a name that you've been talking about for a while, and yet there is Mose Jeffrey, who's been kind of the guy that we've heard about more often. So that is interesting. And I know Mazuka's also had injuries from time to time and things like that as well. But, Mose kind of emerging is certainly one of the more interesting. Not that we've had a bunch of opportunities to talk about it, but that has been one of the more, eyebrow raising kind of things for me throughout spring. It's just like, oh, okay, all right, that's not exactly what I expected there. So, good for Mose Jeffrey, and hopefully that good competition leads to them having a rock solid guard that can just come in there and be that fifth starter. So, yeah, O-line wise, there's definitely that position to watch. Quarterbacks, obviously, we'll take all of that in, although it does seem like Gary's got a big lead. Tay McWilliams, and then who at running back, and wide receiver, who, and is anybody ready to play wide receiver? Tight ends, again, feel good about those guys. So that's kind of the offense. Special teams, again, we'll just get to kind of see the order of the kickers and how their legs look, and punter and, all that jazz. We'll get to see that on Saturday. Whereas in practices, it's just kind of off to the side typically, although field goals are sort of a warm-up for them sometimes. But kind of fast-paced, rush him out there, guy makes his kick, he gets off, other guy runs up, makes his kick, that kind of a deal. So we'll see it a little bit more like a game setting, I would imagine. So then defensively, I'm looking forward to seeing Jackson Player out there. Have not seen him, outside of practice, obviously, in a Baylor uniform. Haven't seen him in a Baylor uniform, really. So we'll get to see that on Saturday. And Apu Ika, saw where he was making his way back. He was on Twitter talking about, he was just being silly on Twitter, basically, about schoolwork and stuff. And he really was being silly. But, obviously, he and Jackson Player are quite the 1-2 combo at nose. So it'll be cool to see Player in that mix, and just that whole D-line's back. So that should, you would think, be, something that looks pretty strong just by default on Saturday. But then again, they're going up against a good O-line, so that trench battle should be I'm sure it's been quite the story in spring ball, just for those there every day, seeing those two sides go at it. But we'll get a glimpse of that on Saturday.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a good unit, and you kind of look up and down the depth chart there, and I mean, they're too deep and they're loaded up front. And I think over the spring, you've really seen guys like TJ Franklin and Gabe Hall, I think, take another step forward. And I know everyone has big expectations for those guys, but I really do think that they're going to meet those expectations this year. Both have a ton of potential, and I think this is the year they put it all together. So I'm excited to see them and kind of see the improvements they've made because Dave Aranda has been, very truthful about the fact that he needs his guys to create more of a pass rush on the defensive line. And he wants to be able to, just kind of sit back in his defense and go, hey, we feel really good that we're going to get a pass rush from our defensive linemen, especially with the addition of Jackson Player. So that's an exciting, I think, group. We know the talent that's there, and I think they're going to be really, really good this year. We'll see how they do on Saturday, but I'm very confident in kind of what they've built up front on the defensive line. At linebacker, you know what you're getting from Dylan Doyle, but what are you getting from everybody else? Who's going to play Will with Josh White out? Is it going to be Will Williams? Are you going to get to see Tyrone Brown, who had an interception last spring game? Is he going to get a chance to play some Mike, if Dylan Doyle is out or whenever he comes in to get his reps? Who's going to play that position? At Jack, is Garmin Randolph going to play in the spring game? If not, is it just going to be a bunch of young guys? Because I don't think Matt Jones is going to play, at least from what I've seen this spring. He hasn't been out there. And he's been dealing with an injury, Garmin dealing with an injury. So you're going to sit there and go, okay, Jackie Marshall let loose, Anthony Nyanwu let loose a little bit. And I'm intrigued by that, intrigued by seeing that depth that I know Caleb Collins has built. But kind of just seeing those guys get an opportunity potentially to go out there and possibly have a starting role in the spring game, depending on the status of Garmin Randolph and Matt Jones. That'll be fun to watch as well. So linebacker, I got a lot of question marks there, just kind of next to Dylan Doyle. Who are going to be the other guys playing those positions?
And I guess based on what you said last week, we got to wait all the way to media days to ask Dave Aranda about Josh White, which is kind of ridiculous, but those are the rules, I suppose. Corner, obviously got two kind of, just by default starters, basically. Al Walcott, who I think it's not really by default, but Mark Milton, that's kind of by default, honestly. It really is. Walcott's a returning starter. I know Milton's dabbled and dibbled and all of that, and he's played a bunch, but really, when you looked at, okay, who's coming back? It was Al Walcott, and you're like, okay, there's one starter. And then I guess it's Mark Milton because he's got the most experience, and that's kind of the way it's seemingly played out. We haven't been privy to everything. We know they've got some good young corners they like, but it will be nice to see some of these younger defensive backs because we haven't seen a ton of them. We've seen a splash of Devin Neal. We've seen, splashes of like A.J. McCarty, but that was even mostly special teams. So it's like we know the names and we've seen some of them, but they were so veteran-laden that we never really saw a ton of the young guys. And now, Christian Morgan and Al Walcott and Mark Milton, for the entire secondary, kind of give you three returning starters, or give you two returning starters and another veteran, but. Besides that, there's a lot of guys we've barely seen at this point. So, when you start hearing them talk about cornerback and they list off, 5 or so guys, and then, at safety, they seem like they're, building some depth. They're kind of figuring things out a little bit. I'll be curious to see kind of more of who's where and how they use them and all of that on Saturday.
Yeah, so you got Christian Morgan who, seems to be playing the star. I know a lot of people are playing the star right now, so it'll be interesting to see kind of where
everybody's playing everything almost.
Right. Yeah.
And they're all learning every position possible. Even Bryson Jackson, he's learning all the linebacker positions. If you're in the secondary, you're probably learning 3 different, positions.
For sure. And Morgan has played pretty much every position in his time at Baylor as far as practice goes, but it seems like star might end up being the position he locks in at, but I'm curious if he does that on Saturday, if they do put him in that role or if they put him back at the boundary. We know Devin Neal is going to be a fixture at one of those safety spots. I prefer the boundary spot for him. And then, of course, you mentioned Al Walcott and Mark Milton. But then you have those other positions, the field safety, and then that other cornerback spot where you don't feel like Mark Milton is really just, it's his position to lose. You feel like there might be some young talent that could come in and push him to being more of a depth option. We'll see if that turns out to be the case, but I think it could, and that's mainly because I like the talent they have on their roster. So looking at cornerback, guys like you mentioned, A.J. McCarty, I would also say, Tevin Williams has to be in there as well. And then the freshman, Reggie Bush, has really turned some heads as well. I think he's going to be a fantastic player, and I think he's going to get on the field sooner rather than later, maybe even this year as a true freshman. So we'll see kind of how that ends up. I'm very excited about the cornerback group as far as their young talent they have there. At safety, it's really a bunch of guys for one position. At least that's the thought. The field safety spot, I think Devin Lemire has become the guy. I think he's kind of really asserted himself, and he's going to have to put it all together in the spring game. But if he does, I think he's got a good shot at kind of taking over that position. Guys like Cisco Castan, Devin Bobby, Mike Harris. They got a lot of options, but it just seems like Devin Lemire has really done a nice job this spring, kind of putting himself in a position to win that role at the safety spot. And that's really intriguing to me because they're trying to replace JT Woods back there, that's not easy. That's definitely not easy to do. And then they also, I got to mention Lorando Johnson, who's, again, probably playing the star, but he's a guy who's played a lot, and they're going to have to figure out ways to get creative with him to get him on the field because he was really good at times last year.
Yeah, he was. So there's kind of the lay of the land, and, no need to break down matchups and things like that, but that's just kind of a mini preview, and, some of that may be all just stuff you already know, but that's what it is right now. That's kind of where they are at every position, and some of what we'll be looking for. But a lot of starting spots have been pretty much determined, but there are big questions: wide receiver, running back, cornerback depth, safety depth, linebackers, so there's a lot. Left guard, as you mentioned. So there's a lot to be looking for on Saturday, even though there might seem like there's a lot of questions that have already been answered. And, of course, there will be a bunch of recruits out there. I'm sure there will be a nice little crowd in attendance as well. Should be good weather, at least I think. I haven't looked that far ahead, but we're kind of in that time of year where you feel pretty good about it being, clear of any rain or anything like that. You looking forward to Saturday, and just anything else from the whole event that, is top of mind right now?
Yeah, I'm excited. I think it's always fun to kind of go out there and see some of the new faces. They're replacing a lot of guys. So seeing those young freshmen, the true freshmen, go out there and play their first games and get a feel for being in McLean Stadium, and just, the environment's always a lot of fun, and hopefully it's kind of like last year where, the weather was good and it just was a nice little environment for a game. So I'm hoping it's like that, not rainy, and just a really nice day, because I think it's one of those important games for the fans and not as important for the team. Like, the fans put so much stock into this game, whereas the team, it's like, we've been doing this every weekend. So this is just another scrimmage for us. But I think for the fans, it's actually really important to be able to see the team and kind of know the guys, get to know the players that you're going to be cheering for in the fall.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good point as far as, things that fans could be looking forward to, because certainly there are a lot of new faces and a lot of guys who maybe you've read about, but you haven't really seen them play yet, so you'll get that opportunity on Saturday. So it's a spring game. You're not going to live or die by the final score or anything like that. And I don't think anybody's going to try and take it too seriously. I would hope. I'm sure there will be that guy who's like ready to say Bohannon can't do it, next year because he had like a missed pass. There will be that, but that's normal. And hopefully we get some good takeaways and everybody just stays healthy. That's really the biggest thing. It's just everybody staying healthy, have a fun game or scrimmage or whatever it's going to be, and just get everybody out of there and into the offseason okay. That's ultimately the goal there. You'll have recruiting stuff all over the board. We'll save that for the website, and if you want to check all that out, then become a premium member of Sic'Em365.com if you aren't already, and you can get all of that info. But there is also a lot of basketball news going on. You got the announcement from Jeremy Sohan on Friday that he's going to be entering the NBA draft, and he's hired an agent. I don't think that comes as too much of a surprise. And we also saw them pick up another European star, getting into back into recruiting, picked up a commitment whose name escapes me. Miro Little. Miro Little. I was going to say Finland. Omar Little for some reason. Miro Little from Finland. Now you lose one, European star, and you gain another one. So that's just kind of how it works for Scott Drew. But you lost Sohan, who had the Poland and German and American and UK background for the Finland star in Miro Little. So you have Sohan's out, Little's in, and now Dylan Hunter's out. Although he was never in technically because he was a signee. So Dylan Hunter decommits. So a little bit of a kind of busy week there, I guess, for the Baylor basketball roster. For its future, I should say. You kind of have a better idea of, okay, there's not going to be any Dylan Hunter on this team. There's not going to be a Jeremy Sohan, but there is going to be a Miro Little, so where do we stand now?
Yeah, so just keep in mind, Miro is 2023, so he still has one more year of high school left. So he will not be arriving on this year's team, whereas Dylan Hunter was going to be on this year's team, 2022 class. So keep that in mind. It's not like a one-for-one deal here. With Miro and Hunter. So Hunter, he decided to decommit. I honestly think this is a good thing for Baylor. Kind of a sneaky good thing. I like Dylan, but Dylan really did not show signs of the progress that I thought he would his senior year. I was left a little disappointed in kind of what he put together. And so I think Baylor can maybe do a little bit better. And it gives them more flexibility, right? So right now we're seeing here waiting on a decision from Matthew Meyer. We're seeing here waiting on a decision from Jalen Bridges, who we'll get to here in a minute. But it gives them an extra spot. So even if those two guys decide, oh, Baylor, Meyer decides to stay at Baylor, or Bridges decides to come to Baylor, there's still another spot open where Baylor could decide, hey, we're going to go take another freshman, or hey, we're going to take a D2 guard like they did with Dale Bonner, or we're going to be flexible with this position. And it might give them a chance to improve their team for this year, because Dylan Hunter was not going to be ready to play this upcoming season as a depth option. So, yeah, I mean, it's a loss, but again, I think this is actually a good thing for Baylor. The Miro Little thing is massive, though. I know a lot of people have talked about him as a 5-star guy. I see it. I know many people have been saying he is the best Finnish prospect ever. And remember, Lauri Markkanen was from Finland, and he's in the league. He went to Arizona, was a top 10 player in the country. According to the numbers and the stats, Miro Little has been better than him. So Miro is a guy who legit 5-star talent. I think there's a possibility he ends up moving to the States, and maybe he plays his final year in the States, which would be really cool if he went to one of those big-time programs, or he stays overseas and continues to do what he did this year, where he averaged 22, 9, and 6, shot 50% from the floor, 39% from 3 with his team in Finland. So he's done a lot of things. He played for Finland in the Nordic Cup, so he's played older guys, much like Jeremy Sohan, which was a big reason he was so ready for the college game. He was playing, 24-year-olds a lot, playing big, bruising guys. So Sohan was ready for the game, and I think Miro is going to be very much the same. He chose Baylor over Villanova and Indiana as well. So a nice pickup for Scott Drew and the staff. 2023 is finally rolling with Miro Little. And as far as 22 goes, they still have some options now and some flexibility on their roster.
Yeah, it's exciting to see them add another piece, and exciting to see that international success continue. So we'll see there. And I saw that reaction too to Dylan Hunter. And, I'm sure if like some random fan from a fan base that's in the Dylan Hunter running is, saw, sour grapes. He's, because that's kind of what you do here sometimes when guys decommit. But I don't know. It did seem just all indications like, okay, yeah, best of luck to you, and we'll be fine, and you'll be fine. And yeah.
He's a low 4-star guy, and that's great. But right now, Baylor is able to get guys who are better than that.
Yeah.
And it's just reality. So people can think what they will on that. But yeah, so now going forward, it's decision week for Matthew Meyer. So he's got to decide this week whether he's going to come back to Baylor or keep his name in the NBA draft. I would say, I think we talked about this last week. I'm leaning towards him coming back to Baylor. I think that's kind of where I'm at right now as this decision is getting ready to be made. Where are you at?
I have no indication whatsoever, but I'm kind of leaning towards him coming back. I mean, I feel like it would be more of a slam dunk for him to have turned pro at this point if that was really, where he was leaning. But, I don't hear anybody clamoring for him to announce he's going to the NBA, kind of like they were with Kendall Brown and Jeremy Sohan, where you had them already in mock drafts and rated in the top 15 to 20 and all of that. I haven't seen that with Matthew Meyer. So, I think based on last year where you did see some improvements, they just weren't in the areas that you expected them to be necessarily, that he can build off of those. But, I think the fact that he was not maybe the scorer that people thought for them really kind of hurt him, because that's really what he was known, kind of known for his offensive skill, I feel like, before last year. And so he made strides, but it then kind of regressed in some other areas. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I feel like that sort of puts him in a no man's land as far as like, how does that translate to the NBA? You know what I mean?
He's not elite at anything.
No, he's just kind of, he's been good at everything at certain points. So yeah, so where does that put you? Well, undrafted probably, or second round at best. And the thing, folks, about the second round of the NBA draft, as most probably know, is that doesn't mean you're on an NBA team next year. So if you're Matthew Meyer, I think you'd want to try and, perhaps make it a bit more of a sure thing, as best you can at least. So, I'm kind of leaning towards him coming back.
So that's the big piece of information coming up really soon. But then on the other hand, the recruiting side of things, West Virginia transfer Jalen Bridges took an official visit to Baylor this weekend. He also took an official visit to Alabama this weekend as well. He went to both over the last 5 days. So he kind of knocked out both of those visits. He's already been to Ohio State. That was at the end of March. And he's got one more trip set up with Michigan State at the end of April. And those are his top 4 schools. So Baylor in the running there. He's 6'7", 220 pounds. This past year, his sophomore year, he averaged 8.5 points per game, nearly 5 rebounds per game, 1 steal, nearly a block. So he was a good player. He shot 43% from the floor, 82% from the free throw line, and then 33% from 3. So a very good player, and he would kind of give them, if they brought Meyer back, he'd kind of be their Jeremy Sohan next year as well. You know, you kind of rotate those 2 guys while also having the ability to play small ball, where you're playing Meyer and Bridges at the 4 and the 5 at times, and then playing your 3 guards and just hoping that you don't get killed on the glass while also saying, hey, we're going to score on you basically every trip on the other end. So I think Bridges would give them a ton of versatility, much like Sohan did. And I think he's a guy that really fits the Baylor culture well, and I'm actually getting pretty good vibes that Baylor could end up being the spot for him.
Well, that'd be big time. Scott Drew's going to stay active and do whatever he can to make this team better. So fun to see basketball kind of working away on retooling this roster. And they'll have, a big boost in terms of recruiting once the draft rolls around, and they'll be able to boast a couple of first-round picks, if not, a lottery guy or 2. So that'll only help matters, and right now the brand's pretty strong. So wouldn't be shocking to see them score big in the transfer portal. But a lot going on with basketball.
Yeah, definitely a big time, and I think they still have work to do. And like I said, if they do get Meyer and they also add Bridges, they will still have 1 spot open. So it's going to be really intriguing to see what they do with that last spot to round out the roster if, again, they're able to land Jalen Bridges out of the transfer portal.
All right, so elsewhere, so we got spring game and a lot of, basketball news going on. We talked about the WNBA picks last week. That was Monday night they had that draft, so we already covered that as Nikki Collin and company get themselves, some new Bears in the pros. But elsewhere, other spring sports, you had baseball with a win over Lamar last night. They have another game coming up tonight, and it is against where is this on the schedule? I'm losing it. Who are they playing tonight in baseball? Does anybody know?
Houston
Okay,
State.
Sam Houston. Thank you. I was trying to go by the Baylor website, and it's not working for me. Okay, so they played Lamar last night, and Sam Houston tonight, and then it'll be Texas, which I remember from just memory, coming up this weekend in Austin. And Grayson, when I walked in here, I mean, it's good to see baseball get a series win this weekend over Kansas. They dropped the first game, and then were able to win games 2 and 3, which was great. But when I walked in here, you and Jack were discussing, the path that they have to the postseason and all of that. Sounds like there's a lot of work to do, but, your thoughts on, I guess, the series win, their first this year in the Big 12. Now, obviously not going to be as easy against Texas in Austin, even if Texas has dropped some games. But where do you kind of see them now after the series win this weekend and winning their game last night, and then probably you would think winning tonight against Sam Houston, but who the heck knows? And then, Texas and, hey, starting to look at the calendar, we're starting to get towards the tail end here. There's not a ton of series that are left. So where do you kind of stack up Baylor baseball outside of just, hey, good to see them get some wins this week?
Yeah, I mean, they're 19-17 on the season. I've been pretty vocal in saying they need to go 11-13 to give themselves a chance in conference play, which would essentially mean you got to win one of the series between Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, and Texas, and then you got to sweep Kansas State. And then you got to take a game from the other 2 on the schedule. Obviously, Texas, Texas Tech, and Oklahoma State are all inside the top 10. Oklahoma State is currently number 3. So it's not going to be easy by any means, but there is a pathway for them to still make the postseason. They're 58th in RPI. I think this series in particular, you're coming off a series win over Kansas. You beat Lamar. You have a chance to win another game against Sam Houston State tonight. And then you go into Austin, and Texas just lost to Kansas State over the weekend. And I think they have a shot at going in there and pulling off the upset and taking 2 of 3 from the Longhorns, which would be massive for Baylor. If they're able to do that, knock off Incarnate Word heading into that Texas Tech matchup next weekend in Waco, at least you have momentum going into that. So we'll see what happens. There's a lot of factors left. Currently, they're 58th in RPI, like I mentioned, so still a lot of work to do. But if you can get to right around 40, which their schedule is going to give them the chance to do that, they can still make the postseason and make a little bit of a run. Their problem is they're extremely banged up at this point in the season, and I know we've used that excuse pretty much every year. But they are. Their pitching staff's banged up, and that's a position where they cannot afford to be banged up because their bullpen has been absolutely dreadful all season long. So we'll see. We'll see if they can put it all together and if their bats can get going and carry them throughout the rest of the season.
So basically, they only need to go like 13-2 the rest of the way, right?
13-2. No, if they go 13-2, they might host a regional.
No. Well, I mean, you got Sam Houston, you got Texas, who's top 10, Incarnate Word, Texas Tech, Tarleton, K-State, Oklahoma State, SFA sandwiched between those last couple series. So, I mean, there's some possibilities out there, but they don't have, a whole lot of time or a whole lot of room to just drop a couple games that they shouldn't have dropped and then, expect, we still get to play so-and-so and so-and-so. And now you're getting into it where, okay, great, you beat Kansas, but Texas Tech, and Oklahoma State are just a little bit different of a brand of baseball. So it's going to be tough, but they could have just, thrown in the towel this past weekend after dropping that first game, and they didn't. They came out with a big response, a blowout, and then a close clutch type of win to win the series. So kudos to them for that, and getting a win to start off the week, and we'll see what they do tonight and then what they do in Austin. But, there's a chance. So you're saying there's a chance is what you're saying.
There's a chance for them to make the postseason, but there are some numbers that they're going to have to hit. And 11-13 in conference is an absolute number they're going to have to hit, and they're going to have to find ways to win these games, man. But the good news for them is they play some really good teams, so it gives them a chance to up that RPI. But it also is probably going to give them a chance to have a crazy amount of losses, which is going to make it really tough to make the postseason, unfortunately.
All right, elsewhere in spring sports, not going to cover every single little detail. I mean, like equestrian season came to a close. A&T's waiting for the postseason to start. But just a couple of notes. You've got men's tennis who's getting into the postseason action themselves. Big 12 championships starting up for men's tennis and women's tennis, and Big 12 championships kind of sprouting up all over the spring sports here in the month of April as we start to wind down the spring semester. But it'll be Big 12 championships up next for men's tennis. Top 5 team. Your thoughts on where they stand?
Yeah, and they're the 2 seed in this tournament as well. So they won't play till Saturday. They'll play the winner of Texas and Oklahoma State, which will be Texas. And Baylor will look to knock off the Longhorns, which they've already done this year. I expect them to win that game, and then they're likely going to face the number 1 seed TCU, who's the regular season champs, in the Big 12 championship on Sunday, and that's going to be a tough one. They've beaten TCU this year, but we'll see if they're able to rebound and win the Big 12 tournament championship. I think they have a great shot at doing so, but I kind of have a feeling TCU is probably going to win the tournament championship. They've just been a little bit more consistent than Baylor so far this year.
Okay, fair enough. Meanwhile, anything else spring sports-wise you want to knock out? I mean, I wrote about kind of a preview and the good, bad, ugly, just kind of recapping everything that happened last week. But I'm trying to think if there's anything that we haven't mentioned just yet. I don't believe so.
I don't think so either. I think we pretty much have everything covered. I know, women's tennis, they're in the Big 12 tournament as well. They'll play Friday against Kansas. They're the 4 seed, and then if they win that, they'll probably play the number 1 seed Oklahoma, and I expect their Big 12 tournament to end there. But still, they're in it. They're a 4 seed. They had a really nice run to end the year. They really had some close games as well that could have gone either way. So they're trending in the right direction, which is nice to see. I think that's pretty much it. The equestrian season ended.
Yeah, I mean, like that. Yeah, it ended. T-Rex was sad. I think I saw some tweets from him about that. But they fell in the postseason, and just kind of watching everything else. You got women's golf, men's tennis, women's tennis, all getting into Big 12 championship action at this point. And then postseason's ending for Equestrian, just getting underway for A&T as well. So,
and they're the number one overall seed.
Yeah, and they're the number one in the NCATA.
I think so, yeah.
And I think they've got a little bit of a wait before they actually play. I think it's more towards the end of the month. But don't sign me on that. I think that's what I remember reading the other night. So, very busy. Some things coming to a close and some things still just moving on along. Was nice to see, some Baylor guys out there in the USFL. Wasn't the best brand of football. And I don't know that I've ever seen a smaller crowd than what I saw on Sunday. After seeing a pretty good debut on Saturday, but they also had the hometown team playing, and it was the big Saturday national broadcast, first time being back. And then by, less than 24 hours later, no home team, no big, to-do about it. And it was... I don't even remember the game I was watching. There was 4 people in the stands, and I am barely exaggerating. I mean, full camera shots where there was not a single person in the background. And it was Easter weekend, so I'm not sure how well planned out that was when you don't have the home team playing and all the games are in basically 2 locations in one city, which is Birmingham. But did see Jamison Houston get a pick. I know Ahmad Dixon was out there and some other guys. So wanted to say congrats to them on getting the opportunity, and hopefully this thing works out. And then meanwhile, you've got the rest of the crew that's waiting for their NFL names to be called, and we can really start diving more into that next week and kind of where the last mocks are positioning these guys and all of that. But Baylor should have a good handful or so of draft picks here in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I've been preferring the fan-controlled football over USFL. Yeah, watching T.O. go out there and catch a touchdown, Johnny Football out there playing.
Is that what Terrence Williams was doing the other night? I saw a Terrence Williams clip, just so random, and I didn't have any clue where it was from, and it must be from that.
Was it?
It must be from that.
I gotta see that. I didn't see if Terrence Williams was
It looked
in the
like
league
Pros
as well.
versus Joes is what it looked like, basically, from the clip that I saw, and I had no idea what it was supposed to be about. I just remember going, oh, Terrence Williams, okay, cool. And then I Googled his name to see if there was anything about what that was or if it was just an old clip, and there was nothing about it.
Yeah, it must have been an old clip. I don't even see him.
Okay.
Nothing on Twitter, at least. I don't think it's from...
Who's randomly posting old, Pros versus Joe's T-Will clips? Because that was the most random thing I've seen in forever. Okay, well, that's actually a little bit of a downer because I thought maybe he's, up to something, but I guess not. So, yeah, you've got USFL and then the NFL draft coming up. So that'll be a lot of fun here in the next few days. Anything else, Grayson, before we get into what is not a very long mailbag this week?
I don't think so. We got good questions, though. It's quality over quantity this week in the mailbag. All
right. Stifler's mama wrote a while back about the 2022 spring groundbreaking for the new pavilion, but haven't heard when that will happen. Any ideas? Same with the football ops center. Thanks.
So I think the football ops center is probably going to happen this summer. I think it should start breaking ground in June is what kind of the timeline that I've had in my mind. As far as the pavilion goes, I don't think that's supposed to be ready till 2024, I believe. So I don't know when that would mean the groundbreaking. That probably got to start soon.
I think groundbreaking's
summer also?
Summer, yeah.
Yeah. So both, I think, are going to happen this summer.
I know at least one of them's this summer, if not both of them, yeah. And I'll try and go back as maybe we answer this next question and confirm that. But, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's going to be in the next few months where that all starts to get underway. You're asking the question. I don't know where you're from off the top of my head, so maybe you live in Waco and you see all the construction going on. But if you haven't been here in a while, I don't think you have an appreciation for kind of what all's going on. Practically every street's being made over. Yeah. I mean, from Baylor and just, across both sides of 35. They're preparing the pavilion. They're also working on streets over here across from McLean Stadium.
The Welcome Center is getting built like
Welcome
crazy
Center is
fast.
just going up like it's no tomorrow. There's 4-way stops on every street you go to. Don't know which, one way is you have no idea where to drive half the time here or what direction you're supposed to be going. So it's all a bit cloudy as to what all's being built and what's not right now. But, yeah, I do think summer's the safe bet for both of those projects, but I'll double-check that before we leave here. Next question, Scotty B, Baylor King. If you had to predict a Baylor football player who's unexpectedly good spring, who do you think has the best chance of doing that?
One Baylor football player, unexpectedly good spring. Unexpectedly. That's a good question. I think there's quite a few candidates that have kind of already put their name in that category, but the word unexpected, I think, makes me have to dig a little bit deeper here. And so, I think the guy that's really been unexpected, that has had a great spring, that has really become, it seems like, one of their better wide receivers is Josh Cameron, who's a walk-on who has scored touchdowns in their scrimmages, has played really well. I would say Armani Winfield, but that was more expected, at least from me. I felt like he was going to fight his way to play this year, and he's done exactly that. But Josh Cameron, a walk-on, to come in and do what he's been able to do, really impressed and really kind of shocked that he's put his name into this position where he's a borderline starter. Right now, he'd probably be classified as the starter for this team. So on the offensive side, him. On the defensive side, it's probably Devin Lemire at safety, just because I've heard his name a ton. I liked what I saw out of him out of high school, and now it's kind of coming together. He's finally getting an opportunity, and I just see him as a guy who could kind of run away with that field safety position with a good spring game.
Man, all due respect to Josh Cameron, but that scares me when it's like you got to highlight the receiver group with somebody who's got no experience and is so young. I mean, so Saturday will be interesting to kind of see where the wide receivers are. I say Mose Jeffrey for me, just because I don't think anybody had him pegged as like, hey, leaving spring as a potential starter already. And, I don't know that they'll have a starting lineup cemented. We might not even know the quarterback, although we know the quarterback. But, we talked about it earlier. That's just been kind of surprising because you did kind of figure that Mizuka was just going to slide in. I know a lot of people are high on him. So, Mose Jeffrey's surprising in a good way, I guess. And it wasn't expecting anything bad. Just, hey, hearing a lot more about him than I expected. So that's promising. And I'm trying to think I guess you would have expected Jackson Player to have a good spring coming in, so that's not really a fair one. I don't know. I'll just stick with. I
thought you were going to ring out your rolling ball of knives.
Which one was that?
Jackie Marshall.
Oh yeah, Jackie Marshall.
Collins
rolling ball of knives. Yeah, that was a Caleb Collins had some great quotes. He's a good interview. Hopefully we get to hear more from him. But Jackie Marshall has apparently had a pretty good spring. I mean, at least the way he talked about him, you're like ready to see him out there right now,
right?
As like a starter, just being like this huge, speedy, physical linebacker. But I don't know if that was unexpected, but he's a candidate.
I would say I think he was somewhat unexpected, but just kind of just feeding off the Jack position. I think Garmin Randolph has had a really nice spring, even though, again, not unexpected, but I think he's really turned a corner, I think, in his development. Of course, he's injured now, but I think he's done a nice job.
Okay, fair enough. There's a couple for you, and maybe answers might be different by Saturday. Somebody kind of has a big final showing, and you realize, he's kind of strung together a pretty good spring. But off the top of my head, and Grayson's, that's who we'll go with. By the way, I did look it up. Both projects scheduled to break ground this summer at last check. So that's where we are with the Pavilion, Foster Pavilion, and also the Fudge Football Ops Center. So more construction in Waco, but man, when it's all done, it'll be great, right? When it's all done. And when day
it's finally done.
Yeah, I don't know, man. That Welcome Center might be up by next week, though, the way they're chipping away at that thing. But, that'll be good to get those projects underway. Doc Crowd, is Armani redshirt?
No. He's playing.
Yeah.
He's playing in every game, I think. At this point, even if they add a transfer.
Start.
Yeah, well, right now he's a starter. He's a starter right now.
So, yes, Armani is not going to redshirt Doc.
Ooh, Scotty B had one more, Craig, about Dylan Hunter.
Yeah, now that Dylan Hunter's decommitted from Baylor men's basketball as a 2022-2023 edition, do you believe they will try to land a transfer at guard or just use that extra scholarship for the 23 class?
I think if they do try to land someone at guard, it's going to have to be someone that's going to be patient while also understand that they could be relied upon. And the reason why I say that is they're not going to bring someone in to replace the guys they have. They love their guards. When you're talking about LJ Cryer, Adam Flagler, Langston Love, who no one got to see this year, but he's a fantastic player, and Dale Bonner as well, along with Keontae George, they're loaded at guard. And so for me, I think if they are going to take a guard, it's got to be someone that understands that and that would just be coming in to provide scoring punch off the bench and really just be there in case guys get injured. But overall, I think that scholarship spot will probably be used for a wing, whether that's Jalen Bridges or Matthew Meyer. And if they add an extra guy, I think it'll probably be a developmental guy, potentially. A guy that they just feel like, hey, maybe he can score some if we get in a pinch. But overall, we just need a guy who's willing to wait his turn because fact of the matter is he's not going to play a lot, whoever they do bring in at guard.
And final question here, a couple questions from Alpha Needle. Order the following position groups by biggest strength of the team heading into the 2022 season and basically all the position groups. I'm not going to safety, corner. Oh, yeah, you get the picture. Yeah.
Biggest strength of the team heading into 22. So I would go defensive line, offensive line. It's just these groups, right? Yeah, so offensive line, defense line.
I think that's pretty much all of them.
Is it? Okay,
I mean, he doesn't have tight ends on here, but pretty much everything else I see.
Yeah, OL, DL, I'll go with, how about running back? Running back third. I feel okay with that group. Quarterback, linebacker. Oh, geez. Actually, linebacker's going to go up higher because Josh White will be on the team, but right now he's not on the team. With him on the team, that probably goes up to like number 3 behind O-line and D-line because I'll start feeling really good about the linebackers that they have with Garmin Randolph at Jack, and then you got Matt Jones and Josh White and Dylan Doyle. Yeah, that would be number 3 with Josh White's addition being accounted for. Next on that list, it would probably be safety. I still feel like they can be pretty good there, and cornerback after that. And then the only one and then wide receivers last, along with place kicking. So place kicking, then wide receiver. I'm not sold. They're so young at wide receiver. How can I put them any higher than that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of can split hairs with most of these groups outside of the lines. And then I would say the punter coming back is as strong as anything that they have. So I'd actually put that pretty high.
And Hankins.
Yeah, I mean, the kickers you can throw pretty high up there compared to, I mean, they've proven more than most of these other positions have at this point.
They'd probably be with linebacker. Yeah, you're right. They'd probably be more like 4th. Sorry, I didn't expect punter and place kicker to be on the list.
That's kind of where they are. Yeah. That's how much experience they have coming back and how much experience they do not have coming back at some other places. So, yeah, they'd be up there in terms of returning and feeling good about them. But, lines are definitely their strengths. I mean, this is going to be a line-driven team, and I think they're going to have to win some games with special teams like they did last year. And then after that, man, I take quarterback over the offensive skill positions, because I think we've seen more of Gary and Blake than we've seen of any of these running backs, or these wide receivers. So I'm more confident in the quarterback than I am either one than I am in the running backs or wide receivers.
I just feel like in this offense, it's a little bit easier at running back. And Josh Fleeks has been around the program for a long time. I feel like it's more of a plug and play. So you think quarterback?
So to answer the question, you think it's a bigger strength right now than quarterback? The running back room is.
I do because I don't think it matters. I think there's talent there, and I think they're going to be able to turn around and hand the ball off, and they're going to be able to move people on the offensive line. I don't think it's going to take, Barry Sanders to run in this offense. And whereas I think quarterback, there's a lot more pressure put on that position. Like, you can't just be talented. Like, you got to be able to know the playbook and make plays, and we saw last year it hampered them much more than not, whereas Abram Smith, who hadn't played running back in 4 years, was able to just show up one day and be the best running back on the team, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I'm just thinking you got a returning starter and a guy who played starting minutes in the Big 12 championship game, both returning. That should be a bigger strength than a room of running backs who have basically no experience. Now, will it be? That's another question. But for me, your starting quarterback and your backup who started coming back should trump your running back room with no starts. You know what I'm saying? That's where I'm coming from. As far as your biggest strengths.
Squirrel started. But
I mean, dude, we're splitting hairs now. Come on. But in comparison to Gary and Blake, I mean, those dudes have played way more than that running back room has. So I would hope that your quarterback is your strength when you got the top two coming back. But Yeah, I mean, either way anybody wants to go with that, that's fine. It just shows that there's questions still out there, but they're very strong on the lines. How will Charlie Brewer's playing career at Baylor be remembered in 10 years?
Hopefully positively. Hopefully as a guy who came in as a freshman and really just kind of mucked things up, played really hard, was scrappy, won them a lot of games, got them to a Big 12 championship, helped turn around the program with Matt Rule. Hopefully that, and hopefully not what we saw in 2020 and then kind of what has happened to his career since, because he really was a very good Baylor Bear, even though he's not the most talented quarterback they've had.
Yeah, I mean, for a guy who took as much hate as he did, I don't know that we'll ever really see him cross paths with Baylor again. That wouldn't surprise me at all, quite honestly. Yeah. But then again, it wasn't everybody. It was a vocal, segment of fans who just forgot sometimes that people have feelings too, and are trying their best, but they weren't perfect for you, so they're pieces of crap or whatever else was said about him all along. And somebody will hide behind their bad words and say, "Oh, well, I was just worried about him because of injuries." It's like BS, dude. There were people that flat out hated him because he couldn't make the throws that they wanted, or because he didn't make them when he needed to, and all of that. Like there was a lot of really unnecessary venom spewed at Charlie Brewer as though he owed people something. So, I hope he's able to, and I'm sure he has gotten over that. I just want Charlie to be healthy and happy and successful, whatever he's doing in 10 years. I don't care if he ever crossed paths with Baylor again, honestly. If he does, great. I think he should. I think he was a big part of the program and the turnaround. But I don't think he owes Baylor anything. They don't owe him anything. They, found some success together, and I just want that young man to find something he's as passionate about in life as he is about playing football. But I don't want to see him playing football in 10 years. I don't even want to really see him play football right now based on the last time I saw him. And that's not a knock. It's just I think we've seen it. It's maxed out. We saw it at Utah. Like that was your last run, and Cam Rising came in and won that job. So I was a big Charlie Brewer fan while he was here. Certainly wasn't the greatest ever, but wasn't always his fault, and sometimes it was. But he left it all out there. That's for sure. So I think that's what people should remember.
Yeah, I agree with you. For a guy who did not have a reliable offensive line his entire time at Baylor, for him to
run game.
Yeah, for him to have played and taken the hits that he did from defenses that knew they weren't going to be able to run the ball and knew that their offense line wasn't going to hold up one-on-one. It was pretty remarkable. So, yeah, I mean, again, I have a lot of respect for what Charlie was able to do on the football field for Baylor during his time. And also, Craig, we have one more question from Bear for Cleats. He added it a little bit late, but the QB race has focused on Bohannon and Shapen as the two guys ready to play. Do you think Drones will stick around another year or two in waiting? If we lose a QB after spring, do we pick up a quarterback in the portal as insurance?
I don't know, man. I don't know. I would think that Kyron's probably got to be weighing his options, or at least wondering what the future's looking like. If you feel like, Gary's only going to be here one more year. I mean, it seems that's all written. So next year, you're going to be versus Blake Shapen, and Blake Shapen knows it'll be him and Kyron. But then again, you will have some new faces coming in, and there's others, of course, that will be back. But yeah, I mean, something's got to give, right? You would think in today's day and age that, if you're looking at, another 2 years perhaps of waiting your turn, then that could cause somebody to want to start looking around in this, NIL transfer portal world that we live in now, especially. But, I'm sure people have the question about Blake Shapen, like if Gary's named the starter again. But I would think with Blake's experience last year, he would kind of feel like, all right, let's stick this thing out and see where it goes. But with a younger guy like a Kyron who's not really been able to sniff the field, I don't know what that's like for him right now.
I think that's probably the most honest and probably correct answer that you could give, is that, in today's day and age, he probably has to evaluate everything, evaluate all of his options. I will say, though, this Baylor staff is a great staff at building relationships, and they really care about Kyron, and they think Kyron's a pro. They think he can be that and turn into that. And so I think it seems like the right decision. Go somewhere, try to find playing time. But then on the other hand, is playing 2 years at Baylor worth more than going and playing 4 years at a school and not really having a great relationship with that staff, or maybe not even playing, maybe being lied to and things like that. So I think there's a lot that kind of goes into it. As far as the portal goes, Baylor will not be adding a quarterback from the portal. They got C.J. Rogers as a walk-on who they really, really like. They got Austin Novosad coming in the 2023 class. So they'll ride with Shapen and Bohannon if Drones does decide to leave. And if not, they'll ride with those guys. But I don't see them adding a QB from the portal. I think they feel really good about their room.
Yeah, I mean, unless you just had a guy who's like, hey, I want to be a backup. Who's out there in the portal that's wanting to do that? I mean, I'm sure there's probably some guys, but you're not looking for a starter, that's for sure. So I think that kind of limits your options. And, Kyron was this close to being a starter. I mean, if they had a couple more games left, he might have been if it wasn't the Sugar Bowl, you know what I mean? Because Gary clearly wasn't all the way healthy, and Blake wasn't healthy at all. So he was not far away from seeing some major action if that was a little bit of a longer season. So, I don't want to pretend to know what he's thinking, but something to be said for patience, and something to be said for the fact that we've seen over the years, especially at Baylor, they've typically needed more than one quarterback every year. Just about every year, it seemed like for the last decade or so, they've had some issue or another there. So, playing time's not that far away. But again, in today's age, who knows? Who knows what kind of calls he's getting or DMs or whatever else as well is going on. So I hope he sticks around. Good-looking player. Strong arm and, got a lot of good intangibles, but it's a timing thing as much as anything else. So appreciate those questions in the mailbag this week. And as always, if you're a part of the mailbag, we do appreciate you listening and chiming in when you do get the opportunity to do so. Grayson, spring game this weekend, and, we ran over some spring sports and kind of what's going on with those as well. So should be another, big-time news weekend, I would think, and we'll have all these final storylines to talk about and kind of parse through over the next 3 months with football as well. But anything before we go here?
Yeah, and we got to talk about the NBA draft or the NFL draft next week as well. So we got a lot to cover next week, but it's gonna be fun to finally see some football. And so, I'm just excited for that. As far as on the Sic'Em 365 things, we have tons of news and notes, coverage of the spring game as well, coverage of recruiting, basketball, and football, and of course, 365 radio every single day, 3 to 6. Y'all do a great job, and I know there's many, many guests as y'all are kind of going through a spring tour right now, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, learning a little bit about some of these other teams around the countries, and what you do this time of year is you kind of check out what's going on elsewhere, and a lot of interesting stuff going on in the Big 12, a lot of big questions, and transfer portal's helping to answer some of those, recruiting's answering some of those, but there's also, it's a lot more going on. I mean, I saw somebody ask a question today about, what do you think about Oklahoma next year? And I forget even who the conversation was, but or maybe it was like Travis or something. He was like, I know they got Dylan Gabriel, and that was basically it. As far as general knowledge, he said I guess he hadn't paid much attention to everything else that's going on, and I kind of feel like that's the case with every team. Is like there's so much going on with rosters and whatnot that it's hard to keep up with it all, and you kind of have to use spring as a way to sort of reset where everybody is. And even then, I have tons of questions about everybody. So, it's going to be an interesting year. The champs will close out their spring on Saturday, and then we'll see, kind of what unfolds here over these next few months. But we'll be talking more football and more spring sports next week. Do appreciate you listening. Definitely check out Sic'Em365.com and become a premium member today if you haven't before. Definitely worth checking out. So head on over to the website and become a part of that community. And we'll see some of y'all on Saturday as well out of McLean Stadium. Until next time, thanks for the folks behind the scenes, and also thanks to Grayson Grundhafer as well. As always, I'm Craig Smoke, and this has been the Bearcast on Sic'Em 365.